In the heart of Manhattan, one of the loudest and most modern cities in the world, a red brick house sits quietly at 29 East 4th Street. It's like an oasis of time, perfectly preserved both inside and out. This is the Merchant's House Museum. For nearly 100 years, the Treadwell family lived in this house, and many believe they never truly left. Today, we aren't talking about a brutal crime or a violent curse. We're talking about a quiet tragedy, a broken promise, and a spirit who is still guarding her family home. This is the true story of Gertrude Treadwell. This house was built in 1832. 3 years later, in 1835, Seabury Treadwell, a wealthy hardware merchant, bought it for $18,000, a fortune at the time. He moved in with his wife Eliza Parker and their children. The Treadwell family had 8 children in total. They were a typical New York upper-class family, wealthy, extravagant, with splendid mahogany furniture, marble fireplaces, and glittering gas-lit parties. But behind that glamour, tragedy began to take root. In the nearly 100 years the Treadwell family lived here, at least 8 people passed away right inside this very house. And of the 8 children, one was bound to this house more than any other. The youngest child, Gertrude Treadwell. Gertrude was born in an upstairs bedroom in 1840. She was the only child to be born in this house. She grew up surrounded by wealth, but her life was a quiet tragedy of forbidden love. When she was young, Gertrude fell deeply in love with a young doctor named Lewis Walton. But there was an insurmountable problem. The Treadwells were extremely strict Protestants, and her patriarch father, Seabury, immediately put an end to the romance because the doctor was Catholic. He forbade the marriage, and Gertrude, in a tragic act of obedience, promised never to go against her father's wishes. Her parents passed away. Her siblings, one by one, moved away or passed on. By 1909, Gertrude was the last surviving member of the Treadwell family and the only one left in the house. She lived the rest of her life as a recluse, a spinster who never married, completely alone. Her only companion, her only partner, was this house. She spent her entire life preserving the house, keeping it exactly as it was when her father was alive. She sacrificed her personal happiness to preserve her family's legacy, and perhaps that is what bound her here forever. In 1933, at the age of 93, Gertrude Treadwell passed away. She died in the very bedroom where she was born, in the very bed where she took her first breath. A tragic circle had closed. The house was saved by a grandnephew, and in 1936 it was opened to the public as a museum. And that's when Gertrude decided she wasn't finished. From the very first days it opened, strange things began to happen. Staff, volunteers, visitors, and even passers-by reported sounds, smells, and sights that couldn't be explained. One of the earliest stories happened right after she passed. It said that Gertrude's spirit rushed out the front door to shoo away a group of children playing on the lawn. She didn't want anyone disturbing the order of her home. Over the years, construction workers repairing the plumbing reported seeing her coming down the stairs. Others, decades apart, reported the exact same sight, a woman in a brown dress drinking tea and looking out the kitchen window. That was Gertrude, but she isn't alone. It's believed the entire Treadwell family is still there. One visitor recounted having a full conversation with a man in period clothing. Only later did she learn it was Samuel Treadwell, Gertrude's brother, who had been gone for a long, long time. A museum staff member working late at night clearly heard the footsteps of several children running around on the floor above and jumping onto the descending staircase. The phenomena in this house are incredibly varied. Visitors frequently hear the sound of a piano playing from the parlor. The thing is, the piano is broken and can no longer be played. They hear the servants' bells ring, even though they are completely disconnected. But perhaps the most famous story is about the teacups. A museum curator named Anthony Belov recounted an incident. He had carefully arranged a Treadwell family tea set for an exhibit. He left the room for only a minute or two to answer the phone. When he returned, the entire tea set had been completely rearranged, even though he had heard nothing and knew for a fact no one else was in the room. This wasn't a violent act. It was an act of control, as if the spirit of a Victorian homeowner, perhaps Eliza Treadwell or Gertrude herself, was saying, "No, you're doing it wrong. It's supposed to be placed like this." The staff and volunteers have gotten used to this. Andrea Janes, a former volunteer, said that while working, she would often get the feeling that someone was looking over her shoulder at the book she was reading. She also felt someone brush her arm and move past her. With its reputation as Manhattan's most haunted house, the Merchant's House has attracted countless paranormal investigators, but none are as dedicated or methodical as Dan Sturgis. Dan Sturgis, founder of Sturgis Paranormal, has investigated this house for over 15 years. He has conducted over 100 investigations here. His method is described as open-minded skepticism, based on unbiased observation and systematic experimentation. And what he found is astonishing. In 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic forced the museum to close, the house was completely empty for the first time. Dan Sturgis seized this golden opportunity. He teamed up with a neuroscientist, Dr. Lee, to conduct scientific research using specialized equipment custom-built for the house. Their conclusion, mounting fact-based evidence, points to the very likely reality of paranormal activity at the Merchant's House. Sturgis captured strange, anomalous voices not heard at the time of recording. This is known as EVP, or electronic voice phenomena. In one session, they asked in the parlor, "Mr. Treadwell, did you know how to play the piano?" A gruff, older male voice was captured on the recording, replying, "Yes, I strike the keys in succession." Another time, in Mrs. Treadwell's room, a female investigator asked, "Mrs. Treadwell, do you think I look pretty?" And a female voice replied, "Pleasant enough. Pleasant enough." Can you hear the subtle Victorian judgment in that? That isn't a warm compliment. It's a polite, distant observation. That's the voice of a 19th century lady judging us from beyond the veil. But the most incredible investigation took place in 2007. Sturgis organized a seance and hired a psychic medium named Richard Scholler. To ensure objectivity, Scholler was picked up at Penn Station and was not told the address he was going to. The moment he walked in, Scholler stunned everyone. He began to describe the Irish servants who had lived there. He reeled off their first names, last names, the dates they worked there, and even the exact hometowns they came from in Ireland. This was information that Dan Sturgis later had to painstakingly verify using census records. But the most stunning detail was when Scholler mentioned a missing piece of furniture, a red S-shaped settee. The museum director at the time was floored. She said, "There is nobody in the world who knows that information except for me and the person I was speaking to in my office. This is the evidence. This isn't a cold chill or a creaking floor. This is information. Specific, verifiable information that a stranger could not possibly have known." How did he know about the servants? How did he know about the S-shaped sofa? Clearly, the spirits of the Merchant's House aren't just residual memories. They are communicating, they are watching, and they remember everything. They remember the Irish servants, and they remember their exact furniture. The museum today even embraces this reputation as they realize this paranormal angle has drawn many people in to learn about the house's history. The haunting at the Merchant's House isn't a violent haunting. It is a presence, an observation. Gertrude Treadwell. The woman who gave up love to obey her father, who lived her entire life alone within these walls and passed away in the very bed where she was born, is seemingly still there. She is the eternal guardian of her family home, bound by a promise imprisoned by her own tragic devotion. The Merchant's House Museum isn't just a museum. It's a home where the original owners simply refuse to move out. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy these deep dives into true hauntings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because this world has many more dark stories waiting to be told.